The Broad Street Review podcast is teaming up with the Greater Philadelphia Cultural Alliance's RestART initiative, bringing you conversations about how Philly arts organizations are surviving the COVID-19 crisis and the changes they're taking into the future. I'm your host, Darnell Radford. Broad Street Review is Philly's home for arts, culture, and conversation. We're a nonprofit online arts and culture journal serving the Greater Philadelphia area since 2005. Today on the podcast, our 8-part summer series collaboration with Greater Philadelphia Cultural Alliance's RestART initiative continues with Intercultural Journeys, where we explore how the organization has fared during the pandemic. Here is my interview with Carly Rappaport-Stein, Executive Director of Intercultural Journeys. And welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Darnell Radford, and today I am in the virtual studio with Executive Director of Intercultural Journeys, Carly Rappaport-Stein. Carly, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Darnell.
So those of you who have been listening pretty much all summer, this is a continuation of our 8-part summer series collaboration with the Greater Philadelphia Cultural Alliance's RestART initiative. A handful of great, dynamic, interesting organizations are a part of this initiative, and we've gotten them all together to have a conversation to talk about what it was like at the height of this intermission that kept running longer and longer, and how we're doing now, and what our future looks like, and how you, our listeners, can engage with these organizations and support them on their continued journeys. So, Carly, thank you so much for being here. Let's start by telling us about Intercultural Journeys.
Absolutely. But first, I should say, again, thank you so much for having me on, and a big thanks to both you and Cabria for organizing this series. So, Intercultural Journeys is just a fantastic organization here in Philadelphia. We've been around for 20 years. We're having a really special season this season, celebrating those 20 years. And we started with the idea that music and the performing arts sometimes connect us in a deeper way than we would realize. And in that depth of connection, open us up for conversation, open us up to talk about some of the things that are challenging or difficult or hard in the world. And as we celebrate these 20 years, we are still very much rooted in that performance, opening up spaces for dialogue. All of our artists are people who have a practice that is very much based in a cultural or artistic heritage or tradition, but have something really contemporary and important and big to say about the world. And that's where you find us, at that really beautiful intersection between tradition, and contemporary practice.
Wonderful. Yes, music plays such an integral role in our lives. Anyone who has an emotion-based music playlist can attest to that. Whether it's a bad day, or there's a breakup or a loss in the family, or you just love the sad songs on Broadway, in Broadway's best. You can relate to those things. the power of music. It is so real. So these conversations in general, we're talking about what the organization was like at the height of this pandemic, which, on the theater side, we've called it a long intermission. So I want to, if you could take us back to the beginning of this pandemic, March 2020. And where was Intercultural Journeys at that point? And what had to change pretty much immediately?
Sure, sure. Well, um, I remember very clearly February 29th of that year, because we don't often get a February 29th. I was
Mhm.
talking to a board member who asked me if I thought any of our programs were going to be delayed because of this virus that he was hearing about, that was starting to travel the globe. My initial response was, nah. That's not it's gonna be like swine flu. It'll pass through. It'll be crummy, and boy was I wrong. Uh, it really, of course, paused everyone in what they were doing. We were having live performances, or we were supposed to have a live performance March 18th or 19th, and that got canceled about a week before. But one thing that I'm really proud of the organization doing is that we had no experience in presenting online. And within, I think it was 4 weeks, maybe 3.5 weeks of canceling our last two shows of the season, we had them up online as these really fun virtual playlists that mixed together some video, some music, and interspersed interviews with all of the artists involved, so that we still were able to get art out online. And I say we did this, and when I say we, I have to credit a truly extraordinary staff member here at Intercultural Journeys, Nia Benjamin, who I think started in early February, so had only been with IJ for about 5 or 6 weeks when when everything started to shut down. And they really took the lead on this and created these beautiful videos online. And that ended our 2019-2020 season. We took a pause and thought about what the world was looking like. We initially were hopeful that we'd be able to go back in person, but quickly realized that that was not the case. So we pivoted, as I'm sure you've heard many people say that word. Um, we pivoted to filming our season, and we had a fully filmed, presented 2020-21 season with a brand new series called Close-Ups, where we went to people's backyards and filmed them in their backyard doing their art. It was pretty wonderful.
That's great. One thing that I think has been really um, sort of consistent in all the organizations was at that at the beginning of the shutdown, um, we were not prepared for an online experience, a fully immersive online experience. And can you talk about some of the things, some of the particular elements that you at that time began to employ to make your online offerings happen?
Absolutely. So, I mean, I can talk about it a little bit in the technical way, in that we got really well versed in how to use great video cameras, great shots to make it really feel like you were there with the artist. But in a sort of community building way, I think the thing that we found that was really interesting was that our audience in particular um, has always told me that they really enjoy the experience of being in the audience, because they almost always end up talking to someone they don't know. And they have these sort of interpersonal connections that are happening both because of and the music or the performance, but also in addition to. And we saw that people actually started to transfer that online, particularly in the first months after the pandemic. And we would have these really robust chats on YouTube where artists who were watching their own performances were commenting and answering questions from folks in real time. So it was almost like we were having a sort of intimate viewing party together. Even
Mm.
though we were all on our separate couches, we were together in a communal cloud couch, if you will.
Yeah.
And I think that was a really special thing, seeing that sort of connection when we couldn't be in person.
Mm.
And I think the other thing that we tried to do, particularly for the first season of Close Ups, is we, after the performance, we immediately switched to these live talkbacks where people could type in questions and artists would be able to answer live. And I had a lot of folks tell me that that was so interesting and meaningful to them because it echoed some of what we do in live performance, which is, have that sort of depth and connection around the artists themselves. And I'm talking specifically about musicians in this case, but I should also say, even though IJ was grounded in and founded around music, we've really grown to embrace so many forms of the performing arts through dance and spoken word and theatrical performance.
That's great. And what a great foundation to to build on, to add dance and spoken word as complement. It's amazing. So you talked about your audience and how they really enjoy that interpersonal connection, and how that sort of carried over to the virtual space. Um, did you see any change in your audience in terms of its makeup, its growth when you went online versus the audience that would have, attended a live in-person event?
Well, I think the biggest difference is that people who normally wouldn't be able to attend in Philadelphia were able to join in. And it was particularly fun for the second concert that we did online. Two of the performers are from Turkey. And so, of course, normally folks from Turkey wouldn't be able to travel to Philly just to see a concert. But in this way, people got to connect and see some of the music that their friends had been producing. And that was really neat to have that connection across the globe. That's not something that we would normally have seen at a concert. And that actually held true for most of the season. When people would sign up with their addresses, I saw them coming from lots of folks from Philly, but from a more global community, both nationally and internationally.
Yeah. That's the part I also find to be so amazing, because we we're focusing on, like, every Philadelphia based or in the surrounding areas organization is trying to reach this region, so we're putting all of this effort into making sure this region knows what we're doing and how they can be a part of it. And then to realize that, oh wait, there's someone in Turkey tuning in, and you're like, I don't even have marketing out in Turkey. Like, how is this happening? Um, I think it's so amazing, like the power of the internet, the World Wide Web, to connect us through simple things as like hashtags and metadata, all that all that stuff you don't even realize is actually embedded in your space. Allows you to then reach people you didn't even think your focus was to reach.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something we think a lot about now, actually, which is, what does it mean that we have an audience who may not ever come see us in person? What does that mean for the future of our programs? Does it mean that we are going to be producing hybrid works from now until the end of time, or does it mean, folks? We cannot call this pandemic over, certainly, but we are starting to get into the endemic phase. Does it mean folks really want to be back in person again? and really seeing live art again, and are going to sort of leave these digital experiences behind. Was this a moment that we were all in together, or is
Yeah.
this the new reality? It's hard to know.
Yeah. Was there ever any thought of maybe a few more years down the road of thinking about how to incorporate technology into the offerings? It does seem like we were at an accelerated pace here. I mean, thinking about how we communicate as organizations, like you know, staff, like employee to employee, like all of that
Hmm.
had to change, and all the platforms that we use now. It seems like they had plans in the works that they were not intending on putting out right away, but just sort of now they turned over very quickly to provide that. So, yeah, what were there any thoughts of? Were you thinking about at all, like maybe down the road we'll have we'll get a fancy camera and we'll beam it into homes. Like we'll figure out how to do it at that point, but we'll just put a pin in that for now.
It's such a good question, right? Because video can communicate so much. Well done video can communicate so much and can really capture the artist, the project, the experience. But we hadn't necessarily planned on doing that because so much of what we had seen in performance and with audience was this real appreciation for being together. And that is, even with chat, even with all of the ways that you try to foster a community, there's still a real yearning, I think, to
Mm.
be together.
Hmm.
Um, so that had not been something we had thought about previously, but it's something we think a lot about now.
Yeah. Um, have there been moments where either you or your staff are out in the world thinking, I've been cooped up in my home, communicating online through, a very popular four-letter word, virtual space.
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
and and then you get out into the world, and it looks like everyone's walking and jogging and pushing strollers, and like, aren't we in a shutdown? Like, how is it that
Yeah.
how is it that people are not? I mean, what were your thoughts when you're thinking like, I can't have someone come to my facility, but it seems like everyone is out and about.
Yeah. It's a tricky thing, right? And I think about this from two angles because I'm executive director at IJ, and I'm also a mom of a 1-year old who for a very long time wasn't able to get vaccinated. So, right,
Mhm.
my calculations there in what we do outside are, I think, maybe different than folks who aren't vaccinated or can stay fully masked. Because let me tell you, my 1-year old's not keeping a mask on.
Mm.
Um, that ain't happening. Um, but I do think one of the things that's tough is, even as people are out and about and really enjoying themselves in the fresh air, I think we still have not to psychoanalyze the entire population, but we still have, I think, a little bit of a lingering trauma and fear around gathering in a space together that's enclosed with no ventilation for more than the 15 minutes that you can be near an infected person and not be considered a close contact.
Mm.
um, and so I think, we have, when we're thinking about time-based mediums, music, theater, dance, you know to know that, to spend that time together, to commune together, hoping that no one is sick and that you're not going to get sick in doing that. I think it's tough trying to think through what's the balance. How do you
Yeah.
find that balance in what feels safe and what feels like you need to do to feed your soul?
Yeah. Are there are there are there similar organizations like IJ, as I
Mhm.
heard you say, and I'll carry
Oh
that.
yes, 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 IJ.
Are there similar organizations like IJ that you communicated with in this time to just kind of understand, what similar organizations like you were doing at the time?
Absolutely. Well, when you say similar, I'm going to go out on a proud limb and say that IJ is very unique.
Mm,
But I did talk to a lot of other
that's what
performing
I know.
I did talk to a lot of other performing arts organizations to see, what they were doing, what they were thinking about. I tried to gauge, both at the larger organizations and smaller organizations, how they were thinking about going back to in-person programming, how they made things safe, how they made what their audiences were asking for in terms of, entry or barriers to entry, in terms of, like vaccine card checks and masks and all of that. I also talked to a few folks in the visual arts world, though it's not a direct comparison, of course, because folks can walk through a gallery or a museum. It was really instructive seeing which organizations had mask mandates versus vaccine card checks versus negative rapid tests versus negative PCR tests. It's a little bit of a choose your own adventure.
Yeah. I want to talk about support
Sure.
in this time. Can you talk about the kind of support you tend to receive as an organization and how that changed during the pandemic?
Sure. So I think, like a lot of arts organizations, we get a mix of support, both from institutional and individual funders. And we really saw both foundations and board members and donors really step up in the first 2 years of this pandemic. We saw strong support for our programs and for the work we're doing. And we saw, especially in the first couple of months, we had two foundations, possibly three foundations, if my memory serves me correctly, just say, you know what, clearly organizations need to survive right now. We need to funnel our funds into general operating support rather than project-based or program-based support. And that was really critical because that meant we could direct the funds as we needed, as we were, scrambling to figure out how to pay a videographer to create programs. I think that the challenge and the hope for the future is that foundations and donors want to keep leaning in to this type of support because these have been 2.5, 2+ really extraordinarily challenging years, and to come out of it, I think most arts organizations are going to need that same kind of robust support as we rebuild our audiences, as we rebuild our programs, as we, rebuild just about everything, reemerging.
Yeah. So in the beginning and consistently moving through, you saw that support, you know, continue and in senses grow stronger with board member support and foundational support. Here we are now in 2022, and
Mm-hmm.
I know there are a lot of organizations talking about, oh, this foundation, we had a 3-year grant that they decided to give us all at once, which was a
Mm-hmm.
huge help. But now we can't reapply.
Right.
So the funding that was there to sustain us during the pandemic, what does it look like now? What does that support look like now? And as we are looking at a new fiscal year.
Well, I think we're not that dissimilar from other organizations in that, the 2 and 3 year grants do expire. And, we all wish they were 5 or 10 year grants, or that they just kept going and renewing automatically. We've been really fortunate, though, in that, we've really leaned into as much long range planning as we can. So we've been really fortunate to get our third National Endowment for the Arts grant for a project happening this spring. And we really continue to do a lot of grant writing, and also really to work with our board and our donors to shore up support for programs. Because anyone who's a fundraiser will tell you it's not an automatic thing. It's a long process that really involves working with a lot of people over a long time to build momentum and energy and support for your organization. And that's where we are, is building momentum, energy, and support, and hoping that donors and will continue to go on this adventure with us and keep supporting the art that we're creating.
When in this process did the Greater Philadelphia Cultural Alliance and the RestART initiative enter the picture?
I think it was about a year ago. I think it was over the summer that they started the initiative. And then they did a couple months of looking at all of our marketing and communications. And then they started helping us shape some plans.
And how has participation in the RestART initiative gone for you?
Well, it's been really helpful. I've been working with Cabria Rogers, who is just a delightful human.
Mm-hmm.
And she's really helped us think about the ways in which we tell our story as an organization, and the different channels there are to get our messaging out there, and the different ways we can get our work and our messaging out there. And really, the biggest outcome of working with Cabria is how much as a team we realized that marketing and communications is a job in and of itself. And out of that came a need for actually a new staff member. So that's a pretty big emergence from our work with RestART.
Yes, it's not just social media posts.
I know.
It's so much more.
Yes. It's a lot of very intentional thought and work, and as we realized it, we just realized how much it was missing on not that I really have two extraordinary staff members. Not that they can't do it, that they were already at capacity.
Yeah, I feel like we're at this point where if someone finds a resource that becomes so valuable to that effort, that they should just share it.
Yeah.
Hey,
absolutely.
look what I found. Please jump on this. Create your own account today.
Yes.
It's some of those things. Like, it's the part that makes us a community. We're all in the same struggle. So if somebody finds a way, forward, share that knowledge with the other organizations who are still trying to find a way forward.
Oh, yes.
So we talked a little bit. We talked about support and what's, looking at the future of support. Mm-hmm. Do you feel adequately supported at this point?
That's a great question. I feel like there are a lot of people and institutions that love IJ, and I am extremely grateful for that. I will also say, as a small organization, it is always a juggling act, trying to make sure that you are resourcing every project fully, and that, quite honestly, artists are paid for their work at a level that's fair, especially when we're looking at, the rate of inflation right now and how much everything costs. We have to be really mindful. So in answer to your question, yes, and is the answer.
That is also
Yes,
the best.
and.
Yes, great answer. Um, if you could, or what do you need to hear from the leaders of this industry at this point? If you haven't already heard some, you know, positive, reassuring advice, like what do you need to hear from the leaders of this organization, of the industry, these so-called leaders, that help and assist all of us in terms of seeing a future in our organizations?
That's another really good question. I think the answer is I would love to hear someone say, the arts are fully back. Come on out. People really want to be in their seats buying tickets more than ever. And we're excited to think about sustainable frameworks.
Yes.
That might be more of a wish than an actual possibility. But I, I would actually love, because I know that there are people thinking about how we bring audiences back and how we mitigate, not turning into super spreader events
Hmm.
um, as performing artists and performing arts organizations. I would love to. I would love to have a very clear set of guidelines.
Yeah. If you were on a sustainability committee
Hmm.
panel,
Hmm.
outfit, if you will,
Hmm.
um, what would you suggest?
Well, I think several things. I don't want to get too much on my soapbox, so reel me in if you
Well,
need
this
to.
is a soapbox, so you don't have to get on
um,
your soapbox, but you could stand on mine.
well, thank you. We can share the soapbox then. Um, I I think a couple things about sustainability. I think that there are so many people in the arts world that work so hard and put so much of their energy and love and time into caring for and nourishing their arts organizations. And at some point, that is the crisis of sustainability we are going to have when people can no longer pour themselves in. We reach a level of exhaustion, and I think the pandemic has exacerbated that. I don't think I'm saying anything new. I think a lot of people have talked about burnout, but I do worry for our art sector where we continue to pour ourselves in, and at some point it just becomes exhausting and unsustainable. So if I were on a sustainability panel, I would say, let's get all artists and arts administrators paid up to a living wage so that they can continue to do the art they are doing without the fear of not being able to support themselves. That's item one. And then, I think that there are a lot of structural things in the arts that I was hoping would come out of the sharing economy that the pandemic has sort of interrupted, but things like office space for small organizations and having frameworks where people can, organizations can, I should say, um, jump into shared resources without having a shared, nonprofit structure. But space is one of those things that we all need and crave, and it would be a really beautiful thing to have more shared spaces.
Yes.
I'll stop there. I feel like I could go on for another hour or two.
I know. I feel like if we all went to a happy hour on the other side of, when
Hmm.
it's endemic and much safer, I think the
Yes.
conversation would just be about sustainability, and we'd all
Yes.
be saying the same thing, like, right, right.
Yeah.
Would you like another drink? Yes, yes. Keep them coming over here.
I'll meet you there, Darnell.
um, yeah. So, can you think about, were there any tough choices that you had to make during this time? for your organization, like cancellation, like a scale down of something that was really hard to do at the time, and if so, are there plans for that to return?
Yeah. Um, I think one of the toughest things we had to do, honestly, was just cancel that very first concert. And we plan our seasons a year at least, sometimes more in advance, sometimes 2 or 3 or even 4 years in advance. And so we'd been working with this artist for a year and a half at that point, and canceling that concert really hurt. He did not want to cancel,
Mm,
and it was really tough. And eventually we knew, that we just had to, and he agreed, but it was a hard decision. Um, Optimistically, we were trying to reschedule for June.
mm,
That didn't happen. I think the other tough choices are honestly on a season wide basis, which is, what medium do we create in? Are we, where do we show more recorded video? Do we go hybrid? Do we go live? Those are really the hard choices that we're thinking about. And they're hard choices because it means we have to make decisions about where we put our resources.
mhm,
And as a small organization, you do have, we have incredible people working for us. The staff that works for IJ, I feel incredibly lucky every day that that I get to work with them. But we as a team are 3 people, which necessarily means there is limited capacity for what we can do. So trying to make decisions when you're not exactly sure how the world is going to change around you is really tough, and has been a real lesson in decision making on a roller coaster.
mm. Yeah. Do you have a thought in your mind when, like in a time frame that you think the communities will start to return?
Well, my hope is that they'll be back for our season opener, which which is this October. We have this really incredible project. Is funded by the William Penn Foundation, called the Table Sessions, where artists are performing first for about 45 minutes to an hour. And then we gather around the table, quite literally, break bread together and talk about the artists and their practice, and the things that they're thinking about and what's going on in the world. And it's meant to help us reconnect to each
Mhm.
other, to rebuild trust in each other after a couple of very long years of not being together. We just have 3 phenomenal artists who are curating these 3 events: Solomon Temple, Mel Sue, and Jimena Violante. Um, and we're really just hoping that people come back and join us. They're small events, maybe 40 or 45 people per night, 3 nights each.
Yeah.
So if your listeners want to come and want to help prove my decision making right, that folks want to be back together, they can visit our website, learn a little bit more about the artists, and then starting in August, they'll be able to buy tickets.
Yes. Save the dates. Mark your calendars. October.
Hmm.
October. We're back in the spaces.
Yes, we are.
Mask or no mask. We're gonna be comfortable
We'll
in
have to see.
whatever the structure is. Whatever the structure is, we're gonna be. I'm ready for it. Are they ready?
We're ready. We're ready.
Um, now, so just a couple more questions.
Yeah, of
How
course.
can how can the community, well, obviously, uh, come to your October season opener is one,
Sure.
but how what are other ways that the community can support your efforts?
Absolutely. So coming back to live performances is, of course, important and wonderful. And I hope that everyone who's listening runs over to our website, bookmarks the page, and gets ready to buy a ticket in August. That's one way. And then, of course, like every arts nonprofit, we are sustained by the people who love us and think that this work is really important, and they want to see us thrive. And so, donations are a big part of how we survive and thrive. And so that's a wonderful way folks can give support. We also really encourage people to connect with us either by signing up for our email list or by following us on Facebook or Instagram so that you can stay active on what we're doing and be a part of the next thing that we do. And then we also actually really love hearing from people. If people, are listening to things or watching things that are really influencing them, we love hearing what our community is listening to and watching and feeling, and it helps us think through what seasons in the future might look like.
All right. And since your organization is immersed in music, what do you do when you're not immersed in music?
Well, when I'm not immersed in the I should say performing arts in general, because
Yes.
we do have a deep roots in music in
IJ's
many different.
interdisciplinary connection.
Yes, interdisciplinary. Oh gosh, well, when I am not doing that, I am running around after my 1-year-old. One big thing I'm doing. I'm a big reader, and so I try in my 15 minutes a day that I'm not running after my toddler to read, and I've been trying to do lots of novels and memoir for fun, and then I've been trying to learn new things. Although this technically is immersed in music, I don't know how to play the guitar, and I've always wanted to. So I recently got a guitar and a guitar instruction book, and I am terrible, fully embracing my terribleness, but I am hoping to get better slowly but surely.
Yeah. That's great. I've had a keyboard like my whole life, and I feel
Ah,
it's always sitting somewhere. And
hmm
if anyone were to ask me, am I a musician? The answer is no.
But there's always the possibility.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I definitely, periodically sit there, but is it set up and ready for me to like get there and going? No.
No.
And that's possible, because I have other creative irons in the fire. But I,
Yep.
I think I think like wanting to learn an instrument and just having that want inside, it just allows me to think I always have this to
Yeah.
look forward to as well. So
Yeah.
I'm way past the mindset that I'm too late, you know? It's not a thought of being too late. It's just I've got to create space. So when
Yes.
when I create space for this, I can do it and I'll be excited about it. But the thing is, like, once you know you want to do that, want to create that space, it's kind of like I've just put a pin in it. Put
Yes.
a pin in it.
A guitar has been the pin in the back of my mind for like
Or a pick.
4 or a pick.
Pick
Even
in it.
better, the pick in the back of my mind for 4 or 5 years now. So I'm this is why the space is coming now, but I totally hear what you're saying about creating that space and about having that space. I think for me, I just had to do it because I've been thinking about it for so long that if I didn't decide that it was going to happen, it just wasn't. And life never gets less busy.
Yes. Yes. Oh, I mean, I think that's the thing. There's so many people I know who, uh, you know, haven't yet grasped that thought process.
Yeah.
Life always gets busy. I mean, they explain it in so many ways. They'll say like your inbox is never empty,
Right.
bunch of things like that. You just have to keep, so you're always adjusting. Like that's
Yeah.
why we are living. That's why we
Mm-hmm.
have documents that are also living, because
Yes.
things
Yes. Yes.
change all the time and we just
Yeah.
have to be ready for that. And I think
Mm-hmm.
some of the sustainability ideas that you had, I mean, they're just no brainers, right? I mean,
Yes. Very true.
who would have thought that artists and administrators need to have a living wage? Like
Mm-hmm.
this sounds like a great idea. Like an idea
Mm-hmm.
that I'm pretty sure show of hands, everybody everybody
Everybody in the room.
contributing to that. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
the sharing of infrastructure and resources, I think, I think now as we are thinking about how to be more creative technically,
Mm-hmm.
I think it might allow for that. We're seeing a lot of, we took up a lot of space to do certain things. Like as technology changes, like you don't need a huge desk for a large CRT monitor unless you are one of those nonprofits who gets,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you know, handed down technology. But as that technology kind of, simplifies, we start to think, wait, you know what? Maybe, like NPR did with Tiny Desk, like
Mm-hmm.
we can allocate an space in our office to create a cool little performance venue.
Yeah. Well, we actually took some inspiration from Tiny Desk from
Hmm.
to going to people's backyards
Yes.
because it was creating that little corner
Hmm.
where it was really fun to just be with the artists and it was on their home turf too. I
Yeah.
should say the second season because you got to shout out your amazing partners when you have them.
Hmm.
We filmed at Bartram's Gardens. Who,
Oh wow.
if you've
I
never
love
been there,
that.
it's gorgeous, and they were so welcoming and just let us in all day to film our second season, which was curated by the incomparable Ursula Rucker.
Yeah, incomparable indeed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So one more thing, and then we'll let you go. Um,
Sure.
what makes your organization relevant today?
Ooh. Well, I think one of the things that we are grappling with as a society is that we keep talking past each other. We get very entrenched in the ways that we think, which is inevitably influenced by our own frameworks and the way we grew up and are in the world. And I think one of the things that is so beautiful about intercultural journeys is that when you come to a performance, each person is sharing a bit of their art and sharing a bit of their self and giving you a more nuanced view of a perspective in the world. And I think that sometimes we don't take the time for
Mhm.
that nuance and for that lens. And so, this year, one of the things that I think is really beautiful about the season is that it is a welcoming in and a real celebration of the both biological and chosen families that we have. That's something that all of the artists are talking a lot about. And it's a real celebration too, just of love, of the way we express love to each other. And I'm thinking particularly of the really beautiful season ender, which is poet Denise Frohman, who's doing a bunch of first person interviews with Latina queer elders and turning those first person interviews into a poetic and musical or sonic final just celebration, I'm going to call it, of stories. And so I think why we are relevant right now is that we are telling these stories. We are inviting people in to be a part of the journey from wherever they are. They can join us on that journey. They can pick up with any of the artists and they can dip in and come to be a part of it for a little while and then hopefully come back and be a part of the journey again. And wherever they are on their journey, we welcome them in and we can't wait to see them again.
All right. That's Carly Rappaport-Stein, Executive Director of Intercultural Journeys. Thank you so much for taking the time to tell us about your organization, to tell us about this, how this long intermission looked through your lens, and also to give us some great insight on sustainability and how to continue supporting organizations like yours. For the listeners, if you want to learn more about Intercultural Journeys, visit them online at interculturaljourneys.org. And we will have that link in our show notes, of course. Carly, thank you again for taking the time. I really appreciate it. And it was great to learn about your organization.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Darnell.
Thanks for listening to Restart with BSR, presented by the Greater Philadelphia Cultural Alliance and the Broad Street Review podcast. Want to get involved with Broad Street Review? Head on over to our website at www.broadstreetreview.com to read, subscribe to our weekly newsletters, learn about writing for BSR, or become a supporter. Our readers' donations keep us running. Join the BSR conversation on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at BroadST Review. Thanks for being part of our community.